Hey, are you an advancing guitar player who's trying to develop your ability to improvise but feel like your practice is just not effective and/or you're wasting time in your practice? Hey guys, what's up? My name is Matt Friedland. I'm a music educator, founder of the 360 Music System, and a jazz guitar player. In this video, I want to share with you some key tips on how you can approach developing your improvisational skills. I appreciate you checking out the channel. If you get value from this video, please hit the like button. And if you want to be notified of future videos that I upload, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. So what we're going to cover are 6 steps that can help transform your practice to help you become a better improviser. Now, this video is going to be for guitar players who are at that late intermediate, trying to get to that advancing level, meaning that you know basically major scales or minor scales pretty well. You know your forms on the fretboard, you know your arpeggios and things of that nature, and you're into playing improvisational music, whether it's blues or jazz or rock or funk that allows for improvisation and solos. So tip number 1 to improving your practice so you can become a better improviser is before you go to play your guitar, you really want to be thinking about, why you're going to go play what you're going to go play. And I've talked to a lot of guitar students and I've talked to a lot of guitar players. And when I ask them this question, what do they think about before they get started? And they really don't a lot of times. They just kind of pick up the guitar and just kind of either noodle around with some scales or maybe just play some licks or parts of tunes and things of that nature. So if you're doing that, that might be fun, right, to start off with. But what happens is if you're doing that for 15 minutes, 20 minutes to an hour or 2 hours, at the end of that session, you kind of might feel like, well, I just did a bunch of stuff and I'm not sure why I did it. And I'm not sure I feel like I got any better or improved anything. And that is usually what leads to the feeling of wasting your time with your practice. So the first step is you want to think about what am I going to practice and why am I practicing it? So generally when it comes to thinking about why I'm practicing anything, I think it really kind of falls under 2 main concepts. And those are either I'm going to be practicing something because I'm going to be preparing to play music with other people, or I'm going to be playing or preparing to play music for other people. And I think everything falls under that category. And under that same category of performing for people, I would also throw in the concept of like maybe you want to write or record your own music. So you're going to record it and then you want to publish it, you want to put it out, post it online or whatever. So you're preparing to record your music, so you want your music to sound good, so you're going to practice for that. After you determine like why you're practicing, what you're going to practice, then this falls under the tip number 2 under the next category is like the context. Now, remember, we're talking about in this video practicing to become a better improviser. When you are trying to become a better improviser, you have to be thinking about the context in which you will be improvising. So just noodling around on, scales and things like that on the fretboard or even just jamming to random backing tracks generally is not going to really help you become a better improviser because you're not thinking about the context in which you're going to have to improvise. And what I mean by context is generally like, what is the tune or the song format that you have the opportunity to improvise over? So what might that be? Well, blues, for example, is a very common format that you would be improvising over. So you'd want to be thinking about, I need to practice ideas that will work in a 12-bar blues format in various keys or different grooves or tempos. Maybe it's jazz. Jazz is a highly improvisational form of music. So which tunes or standards are you going to practice improvising over? Could be rock or funk or whatever. But think about like, what is the tune that I actually am going to be able to improvise over so I can practice in that way so it allows me to transition what I'm practicing into that tune. Like I said, if you're just noodling around or playing the backing tracks, then you go to improvise over a blues or an actual tune and you don't know what you're doing, it's because you haven't practiced in that context. So number 2, think about the context, the song, or the format in which you're actually going to be able to improvise. For the example of this video, I'm going to use the format of a 12-bar blues, a minor 12-bar blues, and more specifically the jazz standard Mr. PC by John Coltrane, which is a minor blues in C minor. It's basically got 4 chords, standard 12-bar minor blues. We've got C minor or C minor 6. We've got F minor 6. You can also play minor 7s. It's got A flat 7 and G7. and then it kind of turns around back to the top in a standard 12-bar format. So that's my context, that's my format. So now that I know that, that gives me parameters to what do I need to practice to enhance my ability to improvise over this tune. Well, I've got a C minor chord, or C minor 6. That means I need ideas or phrases that I can play over that chord. Like stuff like that. Things like that. So I need ideas that I can play over the C minor chord, the F minor chord, the A flat 7 chord, and the G7 chord. And because I know the context of what I want to improvise over, now that narrows it down and defines what are the key things that I need to practice in order to enhance my ability to improvise. Just turning on a backing track and soloing over the form without practicing anything in the beginning is not going to enhance your ability to improvise. That happens later in the process. Okay, so working on a minor blues and Mr. PC is the context. Now we get into the how we're going to actually go about, practicing so we can improve our improvisational skills. That brings me to the next topic, which is going to be the concept of warming up. Now this goes hand in hand with your practice. And when I ask a lot of guitar students of mine about, what they do in their warm up, sometimes they'll play, riffs from songs or things that they know, which is good. But sometimes they say they just pick up the guitar and play and they don't really have any structure or method to what they play. And that is a big mistake if you really want to enhance your improvisational skills. So let's talk about real quick why it's important to warm up if you're not warming up, okay? Our hands execute on the guitar. They are the connecting device between what we hear in our mind and what we want to execute in our mind and our ears onto the fretboard. So if you're just playing and your hands aren't warmed up, it's going to be a block in transition from what's in your mind to executing on the fretboard. You're just not going to execute as well. So getting your hands nice and loose and warmed up and building your motor skills is going to be a key connecting factor to your ability to actually transition from what you hear in your mind to your physical ability to play it in an actual musical situation. I think about warming up in the way that an athlete warms up. I used to play baseball in high school competitively. One of the things that we used to do when we were warming up was we would do something called short toss and long toss. So what we would do is a teammate of mine to warm up before a game or a practice, we'd grab our glove, we'd grab the ball, we'd be standing about 7 feet away from each other, and we'd just be lightly tossing the ball back and forth, for about, 5 minutes. Just loosening up the muscles in the arm, no big movements yet, and just very soft and just kind of getting used to the hands absorbing the ball and just getting all that stuff kind of, warmed up, getting all the motor skills warmed up, all the muscles loosened up, the hand-eye coordination, getting that, kind of working and functioning. And then gradually what we would do is we would just start expanding farther out, farther and farther. And then the arm motion gets bigger, we start winding up, the ball's coming in a little harder, so we start working on our technique to absorb the ball and catching the ball. And then eventually, you'll see this, the pros do this in the outfield of games, or they might be 200 feet, away or farther, maybe 250 feet, and they're having to do, big motions to throw the ball, across the field. And so the thing is, if they were to start that way, they're likely to injure their arm or create all kinds of problems by just kind of rifling the ball, that far away. So the thing is, warming up should be that gradual process, and I think music is very similar. If you're just playing whatever when you start, that's kind of like you're just all the way out here with the long toss right away, and you can create a lot of problems for yourself. You can fatigue your hands out. You're not really benefiting from developing any skills, and it's just not a good way to go about practicing. So if we think about the way to warm up, start very simple and very slow. One of the ways that I like to warm up is I like to warm up using ideas, again, that I can utilize in an improvisational context. So like I said, if I'm playing over Mr. PC and I've got a C minor chord to start with, I need a C minor phrase that I can play over it, at least as a starting point. So one thing is I'm going to think of a phrase that I like that I'm going to utilize as my warm-up and my practice to enhance my improvisational abilities. So I'll figure out one here in a second. But here's the thing is when you warm up, doing stuff like this is not going to, in this case, help me improvise over Mr. PC in a C minor blues. That has no relevance to that. So I don't do things like that. That has no bearing on it. Of course, I could practice a C minor scale, whatever, that's C melodic minor. But again, just practicing the scale up and down is not going to help me develop ideas for improvisation. I'll just be able to know how to play the scale up and down. What I find I really need to be able to do is I need to take that scale or a phrase and work that into my practice, because that's what allows it to transition into my actual improvisational abilities. So you want to pick a phrase that you like or know or familiar with, or learn one and use that, but keep it simple. So for this example here, I'm going to use this common minor phrase that we hear in a lot of jazz standards. Now you could use rock phrases. You could do something like that. Any phrase is fine, but you just want to pick a phrase that you like, that you think you can use in the context of the song. Okay, so you can kind of correlate the two. The other thing is you want to think about the phrase that you're picking. What are the notes in the phrase, and how does it relate to the context or the chord in the song that you're playing over? So this phrase that I pick works over C minor because I'm starting on the 9th. It's C melodic minor, going to the major 7th, back to the root. So it tonicizes the root note and literally walks up a minor cell. Root, major 2nd, minor 3rd, 4th, 5th, descends, 3rd, 2nd, and back to the root. So that's how it fits over that chord. So now I understand the context of the song and the way that this phrase will actually fit over that progression in the tune, again, so I can use it for my improvisational skills and abilities. Okay, so you want to think about what are the notes and how does it relate to the context of what you're playing over, and you also want to be aware of what's the rhythm that I'm playing, so you know when the phrase starts, so you can execute it more efficiently. Now if I play this phrase, I can start it right on the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, and you can start it right on the 1, but it's also cool to start it on the end of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, and I'm going to play it on the end of 4 because I think it's a little bit hipper. So I need to know that. I need to know the rhythm of the phrase so I know when to start it so it fits in the right place. Now that I've got the phrase, I need to warm up. So I need to start slower than that, and I need to use a metronome so I can keep my timing steady and work on my timing and keep things controlled. And if you're not using a metronome when you go to practice, that's definitely one thing you want to start doing because it's going to transform your playing right away. Side note, if you're not sure, don't feel comfortable with the metronome, that's something you definitely want to learn how to do. There's a lot of methods in place that you can utilize to develop your ability to learn to use the metronome. Let me know in the comments if it's something you want to learn more about, and I can share some insights about using the metronome for you. But that should be a given. If you're not using the metronome, most of your practice is not going to be effective anyway, because music is in time, and you need to practice in time to be able to take your skills into a musical context. If you're not practicing with a time measurement or a click, usually you're not going to be able to execute when you actually play music. So we're in time here, 105 beats per minute, and I'm just going to play the phrase 4 times, and we get this. So 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. One more time, 3, 4. Okay, it should be pretty easy and easy to execute, okay? Very slow, all right? Now that's just the first part of it, but what I like to do is I like to maximize my vocabulary for improvisation by taking one idea and then just moving it chromatically down a half step. And then I've got a lick or an idea in a different key. This is now in B minor because I moved it down a half step. Okay, if I move it down another half step after playing some repetitions, I'd be in B flat minor. As I take a lick or an idea and I play it 4 times and I just move it gradually down the fretboard. And what this does is it ingrains the sound, the technique, the feel of that phrase into my vocabulary so I can utilize it when I improvise, but also allows me to maximize that phrase so I can use it in all keys. So really simple at 105, just to give you an idea, I'm going to play the phrase once, but I recommend doing 4 to 8 times each time. So starting on C minor, then move it a half step down. Half step down is B flat minor. Half step down is A minor. Half step down is A flat minor. Half step down is G minor. Half step down will be F sharp minor. And half step down will be F minor. Okay, now like I said, I would do that probably about 4 to 8 times at that controlled tempo or speed. You know, it takes the number of repetitions to actually ingrain it in there. And it only takes a couple minutes to do something like that, but it really helps me warm up and integrate vocabulary at the same time. So I want to be maximizing my time, not wasting my time doing, random, exercises like that don't actually have any musical value, that you can use in a context. Okay, so at that point, the next thing is I'm going to gradually start moving the tempo up. Okay, that's the next phase. Just like that short toss to long toss. Start here by starting with the short toss, and eventually you start moving out farther and farther. And to me in music, that's like speeding up the tempo. So the other thing about Mr. PC is it's a very up-tempo tune. And so that's another skill that I want to be able to develop because, again, it goes back to the context of the song. It's fast, so I need to be able to play basically fast to be able to play the tune at speed. So by increasing the tempo, I'm working my way up to that. So then I might increase by about 10 clicks. Usually it's about 10 clicks at a time, between 5 and 10. Okay, and then so I'd repeat either that phrase or maybe I'd move on to a different phrase or idea that I like that I could use in the context of the tune. Again, always thinking about that. So that being said, I know that there's an A flat 7 chord in the tune. And I know that there's a G7 chord in the tune. So that means I need an idea that I can play over A flat 7. So I could arpeggiate the A flat 7 in that simple arpeggiation, just kind of like a rhythmic figure and moving up from root to root. Okay, now I could play that right on A flat. I could take the same idea and play it off a half step down and use it for G7. Okay, so it's a movable idea. Now again, instead of starting here, I'm going to actually start off with the 10th fret. I like starting here because the frets are closer together, a little bit easier to play. And I'm going to work my way down a half step at a time so I can maximize that one idea, that one phrase or lick. So I can use it in different contexts and also warm up. So if I move it to the 10th fret, this is now going to be a D7 arpeggio. Okay, so now I'm at 115. So this step 2 is just maybe pick a different phrase that you can use in context. Maybe 4 more. Half step down becomes D flat 7. C7, half step down. Half step down is B7. Half step down is B flat 7. Half step down is A7. Half step down is A flat. And then half step is G7. Now, like I said, I would be playing that phrase probably about 8 times or so each time before I move down, okay? And it's the same thing when you do the short toss, to long toss, you're staying at a certain distance for a certain amount of time. You're not like kind of doing the throw once and then moving out. It's like you want to spend a little bit of time at one distance or one place on the fretboard before you move down. So you can really work on your timing and your feel of that phrase, really ingraining it, getting it the sound in your ear, and getting into a flow also with your practice. You know what I mean? It's like you don't want to play one idea and then have to stop and rethink of a new idea, and it's like always stopping and starting. It'd be like if you're in rush hour traffic, you know what I mean? Like you hit the gas, you hit the light, you hit the gas, you hit the light. It's like super frustrating. When I practice, I want to take one idea and get a flow going and get into that mode, because then it becomes very therapeutic. It becomes very hypnotic. It gets a groove and the time feel happening. A lot of good stuff happens, and I just feel better and more productive with my practice. So getting a flow in this way is really important. Okay, now you can continue this process. You can take different ideas that you need to fit over the context of the tune until you've reached a stage where maybe you're pushing the tempo and you're starting to feel more comfortable. And that leads us into the metronome thing, which another thing that I like to do on the click here. This is called Frozen Ape, or the Tempo app. And one thing that I like on here, there's something on here called an automator, which what I'll do is I'll set it to that you can set the metronome that it'll increase in tempo and speed by whatever increment that you set it for. Let's say I set it for 10 beats per minute. I can set it to increase 10 beats per minute in however amount of time I want. Could be, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll set it maybe every 3 minutes or so, every 7 minutes or so, it'll increase 5 to 10 beats per minute. So that allows me to keep going and playing, but all of a sudden the metronome bumps up, so it pushes me to the next level, the next speed. So it constantly pushes me forward, and I don't have to stop playing. I can keep moving. So that's a really cool feature on the Tempo app, where it's called the Automator. You can increase the speed. It'll just do it automatically for you once you set it, and it allows you to just keep playing. So I'll practice this way to warm up and developing my improvisation for probably, the first 15, 20 minutes or so of my playing. Then once my hands get pretty loosened up, I'm feeling pretty comfortable, then what I'll do is I'll probably start practicing improvising over the song once I've got some vocabulary and I'm warmed up. Now I'll do this also with a click. So here it is at 120. And now I'm just going to play improvising over the tune and see what's coming out and what's happening. So I'm just going to improvise over the tune a little bit just to give you an idea. Okay, so that was one time, one chorus through the form of that minor blues, the 12-bar blues. And so then I'm just playing. I'm trying to use ideas that I practiced before, just evaluate and see what's happening. How do I feel with the tempo? I'll probably record myself as well just to kind of listen back and decide what's working, what do I like, what I want to fix, what I want to improve. And then I'll go back to practicing, the phrases and the ideas and just repeat while increasing the tempo. And then eventually what happens is, when you go to improvise over the tune, you have a pretty good idea and foundation for being able to execute the ideas that you want in an improvisational situation. Okay, so just to sum this up, when you go to practice to develop your improvisational skills, you want to think about why you're practicing what you're practicing, the context in which you're going to practice it. What is the tune or the musical situation, the form that you're going to actually improvise over? Don't do things randomly because it won't translate into actual music. Then you want to think about warming up, getting your muscles loosened up, getting repetitions going so you can add new vocabulary into your playing, which means taking an idea or phrase that you can use in that context of what you decided what you wanted to practice over. And then you can improvise playing over the actual, the section or the form or the tune itself to see what's happening, what's developing in your improvisational abilities. Use a metronome to do that. A track is good, but metronomes are really important to use. And then you record yourself, evaluate what does it sound like, what's working, what's not working, and then go back to the practice stage. And you might kind of rotate that form, that cycle. And that's basically kind of one of the main recipes to how to effectively practice so that when you're ready to play your solo, which goes back to the why you're practicing what you're practicing, you're confident, you know what you're doing, and you're able to execute what you want. All right, guys, so hopefully that gave you a good insight into how to structure your practice time, what you should be thinking about, why warming up is important, and how you can actually improve as an improviser in any style or genre, blues, jazz, funk, rock, whatever you want to do. It's all applicable. This, what I'm showing you, is all applicable to any style or genre. I want to thank you guys for watching the video. Again, if you got value from this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. Let me know in the comments if you liked it, what you thought. If you want to see any more content related to this, more ideas about improvisation, let me know and I'll be sure to check those out. And guys, thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you in the next video.